I've started the first book that I'm reading for this video, which is If He Had Been With Me by Lara Nowlin. I'm reading it on my Kindle to start because this one is on KU, but I did also see the audiobook is available on Hoopla, so I'll probably read it both ways, kind of in tandem. This is one that I've definitely seen very mixed reviews on, but I feel like everyone kind of says that the ending is what makes this book so sad. Without giving anything away, this book follows our two main characters, Autumn and Finn, and they have grown up as childhood best friends. Both of their mothers are best friends, and they literally got pregnant with both of their children at the same time, had Autumn and Finn within a week of one another. They are next door neighbors, so they have grown up being pretty much inseparable. They do every family dinner, holiday, events, everything together. They are just best friends. But we do see that as they've grown up, kind of starting in middle school and now definitely in high school, they have just sort of drifted and grown apart. They're very much two different people now. They are in completely different friend groups, doing their own things, have different interests and hobbies. They're not enemies by any means. They're still friendly with one another and they do some family events together still, but it's definitely just not the way that it used to be when they were growing up. Right away, the writing style of this book has pulled me in. It is just so easy to read. It's so quick and fast paced. I feel like I'm gonna fly through this one, but I will say it does read very, very YA. I feel like if I had read this back in middle or high school, I would have absolutely eaten it up. I'm still eating it up. I'm still really enjoying it, but I just feel like it would have hit me more if I read it back then. I probably would have connected to the characters more. So as an adult reading this, I don't necessarily relate to these characters, but I'm still enjoying the story. I just don't know how much it's going to impact me or stick with me, but so far really enjoying it. Like I said, it's very fast paced. I feel like I am going to binge it. So I will try to pace myself to give you guys my updates and thoughts and opinions along the way. I've heard a lot of people say that the prologue really gives away what exactly happens at the end. But for me, when I was reading the prologue, I still had so many unanswered questions. And I feel like, yeah, I have a sense of what's gonna happen, but I still don't know what's leading up to that, what the aftermath of that's gonna be. I feel like there's so many other factors aside from just what we read in the prologue, which supposedly is hinting at the ending. I also feel like a bunch of little things are kind of being hinted at throughout that I also think are going to have a factor in what happens at the end. I don't know, I feel like there's gonna be a lot more to the ending than what we got in the prologue, because there's no way they would just give us everything at the start. I mean, obviously you're reading to find out the why and how of everything, but I just feel like there's more to the story based on the little hints that we're getting about the characters throughout. I am flying through this book as I kind of expected that I would, just because the writing style is so easy and quick to read and it is super bingeable. I also switched to the audiobook for a good portion of the book, and that also is making it go by even faster. But despite the writing style making it a super quick read, I will say the pacing of it has kind of slowed down a bit, and I feel like it's because so far in this book we've gotten Autumn's POV the whole time, and it has very much gotten like same thing, different day, and it feels a little bit mundane. Like each day it's Autumn and her daily struggles, her daily life at high school, what she's going through with her friends, her family, boyfriend, that kind of thing. And I was just kind of ready for something to switch things up and pick up the pace a little bit. And the chapter that I just listened to, chapter 47, definitely did just that. It was such a shift in tone. It was very dark. It definitely alluded to even more of the sad things that are to come. And I don't know if I mentioned this in my last update, but I've heard people critique this book on the fact that the prologue gives too much away. And yes, I do feel like I have a good sense of what's gonna happen at the end, although I still have a lot of questions. I feel like there's been hints of darker things throughout to where I'm like, okay, there's definitely more to the story here. That needs to be wrapped up. I have questions. So I feel like all these little things are gonna kind of build up to the end and just make it an even sadder ending than I already think it's gonna be. So I don't know, that last chapter just made me realize how much I do care about the characters. It has me scared for the ending, but also anxious to find out what exactly is going to happen. I also kind of feel like it's purposefully written in a way to where, despite knowing that it's gonna have a sad ending, you're still very hopeful as the reader that it could potentially have a happy outcome. I'm finding myself rooting for this certain thing to happen that I really want to happen, but already there's several obstacles in the way preventing this thing from happening. So I just don't think it's in the cards for the story and for these characters. But despite being scared for the ending and how sad it's gonna be, I feel like I'm still really hopeful that it could potentially have a happy outcome. Hi guys, I finished If He Had Been With Me, and I had every intention of getting my live reaction to the ending on camera. I saw on my Kindle that I had 30 minutes in the book left, so I was like, okay, as soon as I get to the last chapter, I'm not gonna read it until I pull out my camera, because I'd heard that the very last chapter is kind of what makes it so sad. But I don't know, it just came on so suddenly. It was actually like the last 3 or so chapters, and it was just so unexpected and so quick, and I was just kind of like taken aback, like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting this to happen this way. And I don't know, it was just like bam bam bam, back to back crazy things happening. I think a part of me definitely expected a good bit of the ending, but from my last update, I think I mentioned part of me was also hopeful that it could end in another way that I wanted it to end. But there definitely were elements to the ending that I wasn't expecting that made it a little bit more sad than I think I initially thought. I will say in the moment I did enjoy reading this book. Despite it being sad, I enjoyed the writing style and I liked the structure of the book and kind of following our characters and being in Autumn's perspective and seeing the day-to-day. I do wish we had gotten Finn's perspective in this book, but I know the book that comes after this one, the sequel, is told from Finn's perspective, I believe. So I may or may not read that book. I feel like I can kind of close the chapter on this story. And I do think a part of that is the age difference is like a disconnect. I think if I had read this when I was in high school, it really would have hit more for me and been super impactful. It still was very sad, but I just don't think it packed the punch that it would have, because I am a little bit disconnected from that time in my life. So I don't know, the relatability wasn't all the way there, but I think I have settled on a 4-star because overall I did like the book and I would recommend it. If you're looking for a sad and emotional read, definitely check trigger warnings before going in, but overall I did enjoy it. I do think the ending was a little bit rushed and I wish things had been fleshed out a little bit more, because it was just so like bam bam bam, unexpected, came on way quicker than I thought. But overall I did like the book and our characters. The next book I have started for this video, I feel like this book needs no introduction. Going into it, I feel like I was pretty blind. All I knew is that people say this is the saddest book they've ever read, and that it's about these 4 guys in New York following their lives. Our main character's name is Jude, and he deals with a lot of trauma in his life. That's really all I knew. I have made a bit of a dent in the book so far, and so far it seems like there are 4 main characters, but our main primary character is definitely Jude, and we're getting all of their backstories. Jude is very much a closed book. Like, we as the reader barely know anything about him, and he doesn't give out a lot of information even to those who are closest to him. So I'm sure we're gonna learn things about his life along the way that make this book really sad. Right now I am really enjoying the writing style, and it's making me very invested in the characters. Something about the way it's written and our main character Jude, it kind of reminds me of a cross between Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I feel like Jude reminds me a lot of Sam, is that his name, from Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I'm just seeing a lot of similarities, and then it also kind of reminds me of The Secret History a little bit. So it's feeling like those 2 books in one, but also very different from those 2 as well. I'm just picking up on a few similarities. I will say, while I'm reading the book, I am very sucked in and invested, and even though it's a long one, I'm like not counting pages, I'm very much in it. The chapters are super long, so I feel like this is going to take me a while to get through, especially if it gets more sad as it goes on. But when I put the book down, I find myself not really thinking about it. So again, I don't know if this will be one that has a lasting impact on me or will really hit me the way it has other people. Maybe since I am prepared for it to be sad too, I don't know if that will play a factor into how much this book hits me, but we will just have to see. So far though, I'm doing pretty well with it. There have been definitely sad things touched on, but I feel like it's not anything where I don't want to keep reading, and it hasn't been too hard of a pill to swallow so far. So I am expecting it to get a lot heavier and a lot sadder, but so far I am doing pretty well with it. So we've been introduced to a new character who is becoming a bigger and bigger part of the story and a bigger part of Jude's life. And I feel like they're written in a way to where we're supposed to like this character a lot. And Jude likes this character a lot at the point we are in the book now. But I just don't fully trust them. I feel like I am very invested in Jude and his character, and he's been through so much hardship, and there's been so many people in his life who were supposed to be there for him but just let him down so horribly that I just have a guard up around this new character. Something in the back of my mind is just telling me not to trust them because I feel like they're gonna let Jude down, and I just don't want that to happen because I feel like Jude deserves the very best, especially from the people currently in his life. So I feel like I'm just on edge whenever this character is mentioned or in a scene. I'm just like waiting for the other shoe to drop. One other thing about this book that I find so interesting is I have no idea what time period this book is supposed to take place in. In my mind, it feels like the 90s, but we're following a good chunk of Jude's life, so it can't all take place in the 90s, but the way it's written, all of it to me does feel very 90s, and I don't know if it's purposely supposed to be vague on when it takes place. My thought was that it's supposed to be a story that could transcend time and take place in really any period of time. I definitely want to look that up when I finish the book, but I don't want any spoilers, so I'm gonna wait on that. It's very interesting how evasive it is when it comes to what time period this takes place because there's not really mentions of technology. They definitely take like cabs and stuff to get to places. But when it comes to how they communicate, there's a few mentions of phone calls, and there was one time when it talked about all of them having phones, but it was very vague. It didn't feel like they were talking about iPhones. It could have been like landlines. And then there was one part that really threw me because it was talking about Jude writing someone a note, and to me I assumed pen and paper, like writing someone a letter, but then a few sentences later it talked about him pulling out his phone to write the note. So I'm like, wait, is he texting someone? Is he emailing someone? I feel like it's purposely very vague so that you don't know exactly when it takes place, which I kind of enjoy because I feel like if it was really heavy on the technology and I did have a really good grasp of when it took place, it might kind of take me out of the story a little bit, but I feel so in it with these characters when I'm reading. So those are all the big thoughts I have for now. I feel like I'm doing pretty well. I've definitely teared up a few times, but I'm handling it kind of better than I thought I would, but I do feel like the worst is yet to come. Guys, this book is draining. It is taking me forever to get through because it is truly so draining. I feel like as we were learning things about Jude and his backstory, I was saying to myself like, okay, these are horrific things, but it's not as sad as I necessarily thought it would be, just because it's horrible, but it's things that happen. It's a part of life, unfortunately, and that doesn't make it right or good or okay, but I don't know, in a way it made it not as sad because I feel like I'm one of those people that nothing shocks me. Right as I said that, it's like this book switched on a dime and I started crying because of what's going on presently in Jude's life. It is bringing up things from the past. It's making me angry. It's making me feel so many emotions. And I go back and forth with Jude as a main character because I feel so much sympathy for him, but at the same time, he infuriates me, especially when we're in his head and just going through his thought process and the way he thinks about himself versus how other people view him. It's just really frustrating that there's this sense of helplessness, like he doesn't want to be helped. Not above being helped, but so far gone that he can't be helped. And like I said, his thought processes and the way he thinks, it is just draining to be in his mind. And I'm sure that that's just a testament to how he is as a character. He is just mentally not okay and exhausted, and it's really, really hard to read, but I've heard it gets even sadder from here. There's still one big thing about Jude that is very much a part of him as a character that I am curious to know how that came to be, but curious in the sense that I don't know if I want to know. I want to know, but I'm scared to know. I can definitely see where people say that this book is trauma porn, because at first I was very much like, these are real things. This can happen in real life. Yeah, it's traumatic, but it's nothing that isn't real, unfortunately. But it's almost to the point where it really is so exhausting reading this and so heartbreaking and so heavy. I'm like is all this necessary for me to understand Jude and his character and get the picture? Because I get it. It's almost getting a bit much. I don't know. I did enjoy the first half of this book a lot more than I'm enjoying the second half. And I think that's because we're learning more and more sad things. And I've heard it only gets heavier from here until the end, and I feel like there's gonna be one thing that happens that I really don't want to happen, and I'm gonna be mad if that's how this book ends. I'm gonna find that very unnecessary, but I don't even want to say I'm hopeful that that won't happen, because I feel like it's gonna happen some way or another. Mixed feelings. Honestly, a lot of the beginning of the book, I was like, this could be a 5-star, and then the more I read, I was like, no, this is more a 4-star, and now I'm like, I don't know, maybe like a 3-star. When people say they don't know how to rate this book, I completely understand now. I used to get so frustrated when I would hear people say that, because I need a rating to kind of gauge how people feel about the book and how I might feel about the book. But I am kind of just, I don't know how to rate this yet. I'm obviously not done, but we'll see. Very mixed opinions right now. I finally finished A Little Life, and I wanted to close out the video with all of my final thoughts on the book. Also, I'm matching. Did not plan that, but we love it. It feels like this book took me forever to get through. It's crazy looking back on when I started the book to now, because so many things have changed. Between the hurricane, I dyed my hair a new color. I feel like the season changed. When I started this video, I was in like tank tops, and now I'm in a sweater. Things in my family life completely changed. Even my job has completely changed from the time I started this book to now. It is just a testament to the journey I took with this book. And it's crazy because this is a video I've been wanting to film for a while, and I knew this was one of the books that I wanted to read for it. So I was trying to plan it for a time when I felt mentally okay and at a good point in my life, because I knew this was gonna be a lot. And it ended up being the craziest period of time in my life possible to read this, at least of the year so far. I couldn't have planned for that. It's just kind of life and the way things happened. But yeah, it's just crazy to think the journey that I took with this book, and I feel like I'm always gonna look back on this period of time in my life and remember reading this book while all of these changes in my life were going on. This book though, I will say, it took me forever to get through. Yes, because it's lengthy. Yes, because it was sad. But I do feel like I was enjoying it less and less the more that I read. The first half of the book, I would say I enjoyed so much more than the second half of the book. The first half really pulled me in. I was so blown away by the writing style. I just was so swept up in Jude and his friends' stories and their lives, and I was very invested in Jude as a character, and I cared for him so much. And I was frustrated with him for the whole book, but definitely for different reasons. At the start, I was frustrated that he was so closed off, because I just wanted to know what he'd been through. I wanted him to open up to others around him and to us as the reader. But it almost became the more he opened up, the less I wanted to know. And I'm not trying to say that in a way that sounds unsympathetic, but I feel like the more we learned, just being in his head became so exhausting, and his thought processes were just very repetitive. And I do feel like it could be a realistic look at how someone in Jude's situation could be. I definitely feel like there was a shift in the second half of the book, and Jude kind of felt less like a character and less like a person, and honestly more just like a punching bag for the writer to put across all of these horrible things. I definitely can see where people say this is trauma porn, because to me, like by the end of the book, I was like, okay, I'm just like expecting every possible worst case scenario, every possible bad outcome, and it almost just got to be too much. I did tear up a lot throughout the book, but there was never really a time where I was like bawling my eyes out, kind of like I expected I would. I feel like maybe because I was prepared going in, and I think my expectations for how sad this book would be were just way up here. And not that it wasn't sad, I feel like watching back my last update, I could have maybe come across as like kind of cold and like I was downplaying what Jude has been through, and that was not my intent at all. It just to me felt like things that can happen in real life. So I think I expected there to be this huge shock factor to the book. I guess I assumed that it would just be like the most shocking, crazy, unheard of thing, and that's why I hadn't been spoiled for what goes on in this book. But it is real, unfortunately. It was horrible to read about, and I had so much love for Jude at the start, and then by the end, I just feel like the way he was written, he didn't feel as much like a character that I had sympathy for. He just felt like like a vessel for all of these bad things to be written. I don't know, the writing style definitely changed for me and I didn't love it as much as the book went on, but overall I did think it was a really powerful story. I think I talked about my potential rating in my last update because I was kind of going ahead and thinking about it a little prematurely, and I definitely get very frustrated when I hear people talk about this book and say they don't know how to rate it, but now I completely get where they're coming from, because to me this wasn't a 5-star. I know this is a 5-star to a lot of people and I can see where it resonates with a lot of people, but I feel like I just have quite a few critiques of the book. So it's not a 5-star, it's definitely not even a 4-star for me, but it's not 1 or 2 stars either. I'm kind of feeling somewhere in the middle at like a 3.5 star. I feel like if the second half for me felt the way the first half did, it definitely would have had potential to be a 5-star, but I just felt like the more I was reading, the less I was reading about characters I cared for, and it felt like the focus was just on these horrible things that had happened. It just wasn't enjoyable to read about. Not that a sad book would necessarily be, but I feel like I tend to like an emotional read and I can usually connect with it, and I love books that have more depth to them, but I just don't think I connected to this one the way a lot of other people do, at least towards the second half of the book. The first half I definitely did, but then I just didn't really enjoy the way the sad things were written about.